Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed at 1,000 subscribers. I'll be posting a special video. Her hand closed on my wrist before the door. Take it back, breath hot, nails pressing. I twisted free and reached for the knob. The bolt scraped like a warning I ignored. I'm Mason, 24, I spoke without dressing it up. You won't ever be my mother, words clean. She blinked once, then twice, like a camera misfiring. My chest punched from the inside and held. Dad stepped between us with that store face. Palms raised, calm costume, eyes not calm. Stop making scenes, he watched the floor, not me. My keys bit my palm while I waited. She reached for him first, my name hung heavy. Mason, be fair, her smile was a knife. I kept still because movement felt like surrender. Fair meant her winning again, didn't it? Where are you going? His voice tried to soften. Out. The hallway waited like a cliff edge. He caught the frame and blocked the path. I measured the gap and chose speed. I slipped through and my shoulder hit wood. Her ring clacked on the door as she grabbed. Talk to us, fingertips slid and lost me. I took the stairs 2 at a time. My phone lit up before the landing. Unknown number, I knew the cadence anyway. Come back now, short texts, rapid fire. I snapped airplane mode and let silence swell. The elevator doors opened to a stranger's stare. He stepped aside, I smelled burnt coffee and nerves. I kept my eyes forward, no explanations today. I could feel my pulse in my teeth. Outside, air hit like cold water without mercy. I walked fast, then faster, then steady. Blocks blurred not from beauty but from choosing. Every step felt like clearing a minefield. Her name flashed again when I checked. Voicemail, 3 of them, all under a minute. Family first, think about your future, be kind. Different words, same hook, same net. Dad's message waited like a last card. Pick up, the kind tone he rents. I stared at the screen and let it dim. Kindness without backbone still cuts. I turned the corner toward the bus stop. Back pocket light, wallet missing, phone heavy. Going back meant another trap waiting open. I padded uselessly and kept walking anyway. A kid chased a runaway cap into traffic. His mother yanked him back with sharp speed. Both of them shook and then laughed thinly. I felt the heat surge behind my eyes. My building door flew open down the block. Dad stepped out fast and scanned the street. He spotted me and waved, small like a truce. I stayed still to force him closer. He reached me and didn't touch, good. Let's reset, he glanced over his shoulder. She was watching from the lobby glass. My throat tightened for a different reason. Reset to what? I kept my voice low. To respect, he said without naming mine. Behind him, her phone tilted like a lens. Something in me locked and slid away. No cameras, I pointed and he flinched. She lowered the phone half an inch. Documentation, she muttered, too loud for private. I laughed once and tasted iron. An older neighbor paused with her mail. Eyes on me, eyes on them, choice measured. She slipped inside and kept her head down. I realized loyalty here runs quiet. Give me your phone, he tried again. I'll call you later, promise with holes. I pocketed it and shook my head. Promises leak when brand new. He scrubbed his face and stared past me. People are fragile, he meant her. I stepped back so he'd have room. He took it and I took more. Last chance, she called, palm raised like court. The street answered with a siren far off. I lifted 2 fingers, not peace, just final. Boundaries, the word landed and stayed. I turned and walked toward the bus sign. Behind me the door clicked, then locked. Their voices blurred into one thin thread. I didn't pull it, not today. The bus arrived with a groan and impatience. I climbed on and paid without meeting eyes. My hands shook and then went still. Something new had started and it scared me. I sat screen down, heart loud but steady. Messages stacked while the city rolled by. I let them stack and kept my seat. This time the silence worked for me. I knew this wasn't the last collision. You can smell the next hit before impact. A line once spoken doesn't unspool itself. I braced for the echo I hadn't heard yet. The knock hit before my alarm. 3 short raps, 1 long pause. I froze on the mattress and counted breaths. The peephole showed nobody, which meant somebody waited. The intercom buzzed right after I stepped back. A voice I knew used a new number. "Package for you, too cheerful, too practiced." I didn't answer and the speaker crackled. Footsteps left, then returned, then stopped again. Paper slid under the door with a scrape. I waited, then hooked it with 2 fingers. A plain card, blank outside, heavy inside. I cracked it and cash winked up at me. 3 bills, rubber band, no message. I walked it to the sink, installed. Money has gravity when you need it. Phone vibrated on the counter like a trapped fly. Text popped from an unknown profile. "Take the help, show maturity, clean punctuation." I felt my jaw lock hard. I typed 3 words and deleted them. I placed the money in an envelope. Wrote return to sender across the front. Something in me steadied under that line. Another ping, a bank transfer request flashed. Caption read bridge support for a month. I stared at the number and the sender. Control wearing kindness like a suit. I rejected it and closed my account app. Breath came back slow, not calm, just usable. I dressed in the same clothes and left. The hallway was quiet, too quiet on purpose. In the elevator, the door stopped halfway. A hand slid through and held it. She stepped inside with a neat smile. We faced the panel like a mirror. "Let's reset." She adjusted a sleeve that didn't need it. "I'm late." I watched the floor numbers change. "Family matters override timetables." She kept her tone even. "Mine do." I found my reflection and held it. The car jerked 1 floor, then stalled. Emergency light blinked and then steadied. She pressed the button twice and exhaled. "Talk to your father before you break him." I leaned on the rail and listened. The motor hummed back to life finally. "Stop contacting me through strangers." My mouth worked before thought. Her eyes narrowed, then widened, then reset. Doors opened and I stepped out first. She followed close enough to clip my heel. "Take the invitation later this week." "I'm not attending anything with speeches." She tilted her head like I'd missed homework. "He needs closure in front of people." I walked until the lobby turned into street. She stayed inside and pulled out her phone. 2 blocks away, my manager texted early. "Cover an extra hour, no explanation." I answered yes because saying no cost. Work dulled the needle, not the wound. 10 minutes before lunch, someone lingered near the counter. Sunglasses, brisk stance, familiar coat without the person. A courier label hung from a loop. "Pick up for Mason." He tapped the box. I didn't order anything, my hands didn't move. "It's prepaid." He nudged it closer. "Return to sender." I slid it back. He shrugged and left it anyway. I took it to the back room. Box cutter across the tape, shallow and careful. Inside lay a framed photo and a note. My face blurred behind 2 smiling people. The note used my first initial only. "Join us this weekend, no pressure." A card tucked behind it showed a schedule. Time slots, speeches, entertainment, applause. I set the frame face down, then up. Back down because it felt like surveillance. I took a picture and sent it. "Stop," I wrote and hit send. Her answer arrived before I pocketed the phone. "We are trying to build something healthy." "Consent starts with you," I wrote back. 3 dots danced, then vanished like a trick. The afternoon carried through with brittle focus. I stacked rang purchases, wiped a surface. Every task hummed with static behind it. My stomach became a fist I ignored. On break, I called once and hung up. Called again and stayed on the line. He answered on the 3rd ring with a sigh. "I can meet you after closing." We met by the benches near the bus lane. He held 2 coffees and offered one. I kept my hands in my pockets. "Tell her to stop sending things." He glanced toward the street and back. "She thinks this shows commitment." He rubbed his temple. "This shows reach," I said, and he winced. Silence stretched until traffic filled it. "She organized something for the weekend." He watched my face. I saw it. I rested against the rail. "It will look strange if you don't come." "It already looks strange," I answered. He tried again with a new angle. "She wants a fresh start in front of witnesses." "I want boundaries without an audience." We stood there until a bus coughed past. He lowered his voice and shifted weight. She will not stop unless I help her stop. Then help, I kept my eyes on his. He nodded once, not enough, but not nothing. I headed home with the box underarm. At my door I set it down hard. Pulled the frame and snapped the backing. Took the photo out and folded it twice. I slid the glass into the trash carefully. The frame went next with a dull thud. The note I kept on the table. I wanted the handwriting where I could see it. Evening brought another alert from a cousin. A group chat screenshot, my name in quotes. Acting out for attention, she de-typed that line. Heat rose and then cooled into clarity. I opened a new message to both of them. Short sentences, clear rules, no flourish. No deliveries, no surprise visits, no third parties. Violations end all contact for good. I hit send and watched the clock tick. Seconds passed, then a full minute, then two. A reply arrived from him first. Understood, one word, no decoration, brave. Her answer followed with a longer pause. Conditions accepted for now, the last two words stung. I muted the thread and locked my door. I knew she'd test every line I drew. Before sleep, I laid the money on the counter. I sealed it in a fresh envelope slowly. Wrote her full name with a steady hand. Tomorrow I would return it in person. I buzzed their unit once and held the envelope up. Door opened on the chain and her eye filled the gap. Leave it, the chain clicked off anyway. I stepped inside before she could stage the angle. I placed the envelope on the console and backed away. No gifts, I said, palms empty. Her camera sat angled toward the doorway already. She reached to hug and I shifted sideways. He appeared from the kitchen wiping his hands. 2 minutes, I said and checked my watch. No recording, I pointed to the lens until it lowered. My heart punched the ribs and kept time. You misunderstood the transfers, she smoothed her sleeve. That was support, she pushed the envelope back. I slid it into her tote and zipped it. Delivered, I said and waited for the blow. A stranger sat at the dining table with a folder. Short hair, calm face, neutral smile that practiced. Mediator, she announced, like this was normal Wednesday. I laughed once because oxygen needed space. 3 of us only, I tapped the tabletop. The stranger closed the folder but didn't rise. This is voluntary conflict resolution, warm tone, cool eyes. I didn't volunteer, I answered and held the line. He rubbed his jaw and stared at the floorboards. She wanted a professional present in case. In case of what? I watched her hands flutter. They landed on the tote like ownership. Sign this, she slid a 1-page agreement across. Family confidentiality, terms of reunion, attendance commitments. If I signed, I got a seat Saturday. I touched the paper and felt the hook. No contracts, I folded it once and returned it. This is about trust, she tried with soft force. Trust starts with stopping ambushes, I nodded at the mediator. The mediator shifted, then went very still. She exhaled through her nose and turned to him. Can you handle this? She asked, voice clipped. He looked at me and then at the door. Walk with me, he said and started moving. We stepped into the hall where sound flattened. I don't control her tactics, he kept his volume low. You don't stop them either, I kept mine steady. He swallowed once and I watched his throat jump. Back inside, she called out like a host. I need an answer before noon, clock on the wall ticked. Saturday requires seating charts, she added like logistics mattered. I smiled without teeth because nothing about me was furniture. A phone on the table buzzed, then another. She flipped hers and glanced at a notification. Confirmation at 2, she murmured, then froze. My eyes lifted because the word carried weight. What confirmation? He moved toward her quick. She tucked the phone away like it burned. Appointment, it concerns family planning, she offered with care. I tasted metal and didn't move. Do you want him there? He leaned closer. She looked at me like calculating a bid. It would signal unity, she said, searching my face. I let silence do the talking for a beat. If a child is involved, I said finally. I will not be used to sell it. Her mouth twitched like I had struck a nerve. The mediator reached for the folder again. Meeting is over, I opened the door wide. I return the money, that is the end. She stepped forward with a pen raised like a flag. Sign that you refuse participation, she pressed. I wrote 3 words on the back of her form. Received and declined. I dated it for clarity. She hissed air and tucked the paper away. My pulse settled into something colder. He followed me into the stairwell without prompting. She is going to test you on every boundary, he whispered. Then you can help stop the tests, I answered. He nodded once, eyes wet, jaw tight. When I hit the lobby, a cousin waited outside. Phone ready, car idling at the curb. He lifted the device halfway and paused. I stared until the screen dropped. Family wants peace, he tried from the curb. Family wants footage, I replied and kept walking. He looked past me toward the lobby camera. I kept my hands visible in case. At the corner, my phone chimed twice. Calendar invite appeared for Saturday at 6. Title read Renewal Celebration with Family Witnesses. I declined and added my own note. Decline notified organizer with a reason attached. No consent for public reconciliation, no attendance. I hit send and felt the ground steady. The reply bounced back fast and brittle. Optics matter, her message arrived next, tight and bright. Reality matters more, I wrote and put it away. A bus pulled up and released a small crowd. Someone recognized me and whispered into their sleeve. Back at my place, I laid out one task. Call the office at 2 and ask nothing personal. Just confirm whether my presence was requested. Keep records, keep clean lines, keep breathing. 2 struck and I dialed the clinic number. Reception recognized the last name immediately, then paused. We have you listed as optional support. Optional and leverage are cousins I've met before. Remove my name from any lists, I said. I'm not attending and not consenting to mention. She typed quickly, then read the confirmation back. I thanked her and stared at the door. Evening brought one more ping I didn't expect. A message from him with a single photo. A wristband from a medical office with today's date. Under it, 5 words that belonged to us. I went with her anyways. I sat down and let that settle. Not angry, not shocked, just alert. Something bigger was already on the way. My feed autoplayed a clip before I could blink. Her voice bright and steady, his arm around her waist. Caption bragged about a baby on the way. My face flashed beside theirs like proof I never gave. I hit screen record, then hit report, then breathed. A tag chained my profile to their news. Comments piled fast and demanded my reaction. I typed 3 lines and stopped before fury spilled. I walked to a shop with the clip looping. A bell announced me and heads turned without asking. He looked up and knew from my shoulders. I held the phone out and watched him pale. Take it down, I kept my tone flat. He glanced toward the back room, then at the counter. She scheduled it with a sponsor locked in. My jaw clicked and I tasted the familiar metal. No likeness without consent, I said, hands open. She thinks public interest covers it, he murmured. Then public interest can meet a lawyer. A customer coughed and pretended to read labels. She arrived before we finished the next breath. Camera up, smile bright, he stepped sideways instinctively. Celebration day, she chirped while angling for both faces. I lifted my palm to block the frame. Stop filming me, I didn't raise my volume. Fans expect family unity, she replied, teeth set. Fans can watch you respect a boundary, I countered. Her thumb hovered over the live button like a dare. The screen on her device counted down anyway. 3, 2, 1, airless silence became broadcast. I grabbed a notepad and wrote 3 words. No permission granted, I held it to the lens. Chat exploded in little hearts and accusations. He squeezed the bridge of his nose and blinked. She tried to crop me out with a tilt. I stepped into the shot and stared dead center. End it now, his voice finally carried weight. She hesitated, then killed the stream with a flick. I have a talk tonight, she threw over her shoulder. The topic includes you, she added like a needle. I left before the next negotiation poisoned us. Halfway home, an email pinged from an event host. Release form attached with my name prefilled. I stopped walking and opened it with my thumb. They planned to display slides with family milestones. One slide showed a picture of me at 12. Reply with your digital authorization, the message concluded. I replied with a firm refusal and a warning. Minutes later, the organizer called and spoke quickly. We were told you'd be present, she explained. You were told wrong, I said, breathing through it. She paused, then asked for a short statement to read. I drafted 4 sentences and sent them immediately. No consent to use my image or story. I wish them health and distance while they adjust. Any contrary claim misrepresents me and will be addressed. Near sunset, a different email landed like a brick. An agency contract attached with tiny print everywhere. His signature at the bottom, her signature beside it. A clause about relatives mentioned me by relation only. He called before I finished the first page. I signed months back, breath and even words smaller. I didn't understand the reach of it, he added. He asked if I could help him unwind it. I'll help if you draw the hard line, I answered. No more posts with my name or likeness, I added. He agreed quickly, which made me suspicious and hopeful. I told him I'd seek free counsel in the morning. I forwarded the contract to a legal clinic address. Filled the intake form with clear bullet requests. Stop unauthorized use, preserve evidence, demand retraction. I attached the stream recording and the event email. While I typed, a new message lit the thread. From her, one sentence that tried to sound generous. Come on stage tonight and share your growth. I stared until my phone dimmed across my knee. My manager texted asking if I was all right. I sent her the public clip without commentary. She replied with a single directive I needed. Keep receipts for everything, then go private. I turned off comments across my accounts quickly. Muted names that kept tagging me into storms. Posted one square with a short notice. No appearances, no interviews, no affiliation going forward. At 9, the organizer called from Ba. ZK stage again. She claims you approved by silence, the voice warned. I told her to keep my statement ready. I asked for documentation of any slides featuring me. 10 minutes later, photos of the projection hit my inbox. My 12-year-old face 10 feet tall above strangers. A caption beneath it called me a redemption arc. My stomach flipped and steadied into something colder. I grabbed my jacket and headed for the venue. Not to attend, to serve notice at the door. A volunteer checked a list and blocked my path. I handed over the clinic's draft letter with my name. Security read it and walked it inside quickly. The volunteer glanced at me with something like pity. A stagehand emerged and nodded toward the side entrance. Your statement will be read to the room. I didn't go in because that would feed it. I waited by the exit where speakers spill out. Laughter rose, then applause, then a sudden hush. My words were being spoken without me present. She came out first with a stiff smile. Spotted me by the alley gate and stopped short. You humiliated us, she snapped, eyes sharp, hands tight. You used me, I answered and didn't blink. He followed slower and avoided my gaze. I felt the distance elongate 1 extra inch. Pick a side, I told him once, steady. He opened his mouth, then closed it without sound. A reporter hurried toward us with a recorder. Can we get a comment from the Sun? I stepped back and pointed to my posted square. No comment, written statement only, that's it. The reporter pivoted to her with hungry eyes. She lifted her chin and began a polished line. He lifted a hand between them and shook his head. For the first time that day, he chose silence. I walked away and didn't check my phone. Somewhere behind me, another burst of applause rose. I kept moving until the night swallowed their noise. The next hit was already aligning, and I felt it. The clinic number popped up while I tied my shoes. I stared until it almost stopped ringing. I answered, and a nurse asked if I was attending. Not listed, I said, and waited for pushback. There is space for 2 guests today. Her tone carried a practiced warmth that scraped. I'm not one of them, I said, steady. A silence followed that sounded like a note taken. 10 minutes later, my screen filled with a group text. Her message pinned the time and location with precision. Be there for the heartbeat, she wrote with confetti emojis. I typed no, then deleted it, then typed it again. I walked to the bus stop and kept moving. Halfway there, a sedan rolled up and matched pace. The window lowered and my cousin leaned across the seat. She wants this for footage, he blurted, eyes jittery. Is he in the car? I asked, pointing. No, he answered, then swallowed and checked the mirror. She cried all night, he added, watching my face. I kept walking because sympathy writes bad contracts. At the corner, another ping shook my pocket. A photo landed of two tiny socks on a counter. Caption read, "For luck," with a sparkle sticker. I felt my palms heat and then cool again. I entered a coffee shop and ordered water. A server raised an eyebrow at the choice. I nodded and lifted the cup halfway. I needed something to hold while I decided. My phone vibrated with an unknown caller again. This time it was an attorney from the clinic. She explained my rights in clear, clipped phrases. I listened and took down names and extensions. If you appear, you can set usage rules. If you abstain, we enforce privacy anyway. Her voice stayed steady like a metronome I trusted. I thanked her and ended the call without promise. I stepped outside and the sedan reappeared instantly. My cousin leaned out with another update like bait. She's fragile right now, think about the baby, he pleaded. I tapped the roof twice to end the pitch. Text me later, I said, and he nodded. The car rolled away with deliberate restraint. I headed for the river where signals weaken. I needed a pocket of quiet before noon. Under the overpass, my phone finally stopped buzzing. I opened my notes app and wrote 3 lines. I will not be used to cell healing. I will not be dragged for narrative. I saved it and stared at the words. They looked plain and that made them strong. I looked up and saw my reflection in glass. I didn't look angry, I looked aligned. At 11:30, he called with background chatter. We're checked in, he murmured, breath catching on vowels. You don't have to participate, I answered more gently. I wanted you here, he whispered, then cleared his throat. I want safety first, I replied, weighing each syllable. No streams, no photos, no tags, I added. He hesitated long enough to hear a nurse speak. I'll try, he finally managed, voice rough with effort. I reached the clinic at 1:50. Not inside, across the street near the shuttle stand. I watched the entrance through passing bodies and doors. Minutes crawled and then snapped like rubber bands. They exited at 2:44 holding a printout. She saw me before he did and squared herself. Her shoulders lifted as if stepping onto a platform. He hesitated and then walked toward me slowly. Thank you for coming, she said, tone bright but tight. Put the phone away, I answered, eyes on her bag. She slid it in without argument, which surprised me. He lifted the printout halfway like he might share. I'm not here for that, I said, keeping distance. I'm here to repeat the terms face to face. No broadcast, no likeness, no name, I recited. He nodded once, then again, then swallowed hard. She tried a different track with a softer edge. Could you write a blessing for us, she asked. A short note for the scrapbook, she added. I stared until the idea shriveled between us. What do you actually want? I asked, keeping it narrow. Unity, she replied with a thin, practiced smile. Control, I said, and her lips pressed together. His hands shook like he wanted to choose. A volunteer moved past and recognized her instantly. Big fan, the woman blurted, beaming and trembling. Can we capture a quick moment? The volunteer asked. I stepped backward and lifted a hand like a stop sign. No photos, I said to both of them. The volunteer looked between us and retreated quickly. Her jaw tightened just for a beat before smoothing. I saw how much she hated losing a snippet. He reached toward my shoulder and then pulled back. Will why? Oh, meet us tomorrow somewhere neutral, he asked. Office at the clinic has rooms, he added. I waited while traffic rushed and voices overlapped. Doctor's office only, I decided aloud after a breath. No entourage, no equipment, no entourage, I repeated. He nodded and glanced at her for confirmation. She held out her hand like a reluctant truce. I didn't take it, which made her blink. Tomorrow at 9, she said, rolling her wrist. She turned away and flagged a ride with 2 taps. He lingered like he wanted to fix a hinge. Go with her, I said, keeping my tone neutral. I'll show up on time, I added almost softly. He touched his temple like a salute and left. I watched them merge into traffic and vanish. Night fell while I organized documents on my desk. I printed the clinic email and my statement. I drafted a cease and desist using the template. I highlighted parts that addressed event projections. Halfway through, a knock rolled across my door. 3 taps, long pause, then 2 more. I hesitated and checked the peephole out of habit. A woman in scrubs waited with a tote. She introduced herself by first name and affiliation. Peer counselor assigned to your father's family, she explained. I didn't request that, I answered, keeping the latch on. She lifted a small card that matched the clinic logo. I'm not here to collect testimony or stage anything. Just safety planning if you want it, she offered. She described ways to block unwanted contact legally. She mentioned protective notices for images online. I opened the door enough to accept the packet. She didn't push further, which gained my attention. I'm documenting pressure tactics, I told her plainly. She nodded once and asked if I felt threatened. Not physically, I said, and she wrote that down. Coercion through reputation and access, I added, voice level. She gave me a direct number and stepped back. If it escalates, call me first, she said. After she left, I reviewed my plan again. 9 a.m. meeting, bring printed terms and witness name. Ask for written pledge to limit publicity. If refused, end contact and forward to counsel. Sleep came in pieces that didn't fit cleanly. I woke twice with the urge to check feeds. I resisted and stared at the ceiling until calm. Somewhere between breaths, a different idea took shape. I drafted a private letter to the unborn kid. 2 paragraphs, simple language, clear intent and care. No digs, no blame, only boundaries and hope. I sealed it and dated the corner quietly. At 8:30, I arrived at the clinic lobby. The peer counselor waved from a bench near the door. I'll stay outside unless you ask, she said. I nodded and took the elevator up alone. They were already in the room with a therapist. No cameras, no props, no extra cousins. Her fingers drummed once, then stilled when I entered. He stood and then sat like uncertain ground moved. Today needs rules, I began, placing papers down. I handed each of them a printed copy. 3 lines, short, final, easy to remember. Her eyes scanned and then flicked up fast. You want veto rights over family narratives, she said. I want basic respect for my life, I answered. The therapist raised a hand for a slower pace. Let's ground this in immediate commitments, she suggested. He reached for a pen without being prompted. I agree to all 3, he said, writing his name. He slid the form back with trembling fingers. His eyes stayed steady on mine like a bridge. She took the pen and considered the margin. If I sign this, what do I receive? She asked. You receive me not pushing you out entirely, I replied. You receive a chance to earn something real. The room held its breath for 2 long beats. She signed, then added a line beneath the signature. Subject to review if harmful myths spread, she wrote. I read it and underlined 1 word with my finger. No unilateral reviews, I said, tapping the sentence. Any revision requires all 3 present, I added. She stared, then drew a small arrow and amended. The therapist exhaled like pressure slid off the walls. Now the 2nd page, I continued, sliding the addendum. No tagging me in posts or captions or comments. No using childhood photos at events or online. No referring to me as reconciled without my approval. He signed immediately and pushed it across. She paused long enough to make it meaningful. Then her pen moved and the ink dried. Something inside me loosened but didn't fall apart. The therapist looked at me for the next step. I placed the sealed letter on the table. This is for the baby years from now, I said. No one reads it except me and them. Her eyebrows lifted like she hadn't expected generosity. He covered the envelope with his palm gently. Thank you, he whispered, voice catching on the word. I nodded once and pulled my hand back. The counselor knocked and peeked in with caution. Sorry to interrupt. Quick message from reception. She handed over a printed email from the organizer. The event tonight requested permission to reuse my image. I looked at both of them and waited. He took the paper and tore it in half. She didn't flinch, and that told me something. Maybe she had learned, or maybe she performed it. Meeting over, I said, standing first on purpose. We will test this with small choices, I added. No surprises for at least 30 days, I finished. They both nodded and avoided eye contact with each other. In the hallway, he caught up and matched pace. We have an appointment next week for a checkup. Not content, just medicine, he added, searching my face. I'll wait downstairs, I replied, leaving room to breathe. She walked out holding her tote like a shield. No camera peeking out, no bright tagline ready. She paused at the elevator and studied my shoes. Thank you for showing up, she said, almost quiet. Hold your end, I answered, pressing the call button. Doors opened and we stepped in without more talk. Floors ticked by like checkpoints we finally respected. I didn't relax, but I allowed 1 inch. Outside, the counselor joined me near the curb. You got signatures, she observed, eyes alert and kind. Keep copies in 3 places, she recommended softly. I smiled tight and said I'd already done that. I walked home with the sealed letter in my jacket. Every step felt measured, not triumphant, just sober. My phone stayed dark until I reached my door. Then 2 messages arrived almost on top of each other. His message read, proud of you for holding firm. Hers read, I will honor this, one condition. I stared at the second and braced for impact. Another test was loading and I could feel it. I called before opening her message. Name the condition now, my voice held flat. No more public corrections, she answered after a beat. You confront me privately first, then we adjust. Not a chance, I stepped to the window and breathed. You don't get a free hour to spin. Silence pooled while traffic hissed under my building. Then a new text arrived with a calendar invite. She requested a sit down at their place tomorrow. No entourage, no streaming, printed pledges on the table. Agree to process before posting, she typed, measured. I stared at the screen and let it buzz. I typed 3 sentences and kept them lean. I escalate only when you ignore me. Follow the pledge and I stay quiet. Break it once and I go public. Her dots appeared, then vanished, then returned again. Accepted with 1 revision, came through finally. Grace period of 24 hours before posts. I read it twice and shook my head. Half an hour only, I replied, thumbs steady. Emergencies don't wait a day, send. An image came back of her signed edit. He forwarded the same signature 5 seconds later. I printed the exchange and tucked it away. No speeches, no gloating, just documentation. Then my phone trilled with an unknown number. A local reporter requested a comment about last night. Use my written statement, I said, already moving. Nothing lives, nothing off record. I ended the call and set do not disturb. Peace is a habit you build by force. At noon, the clinic counselor rang again. Quick check any pushbacks and signatures. An attempted loophole, I said, watching pigeons scatter. We narrowed it to 30 minutes. Good, she answered, paper rustling on her end. Expect more micro-negotiations before delivery. Prepared, I replied in minute. A quiet steadiness had replaced the trembling. 5 o'clock, another curveball hit my inbox. A sponsorship deck featuring family ambassadors for a brand. Their names on slide 1 plus a silhouette. My outline, my hat, my stance, not my consent. I replied to the sender with 2 lines. Remove the 3rd figure immediately. Confirm in writing within the hour. The confirmation arrived at minute 42. At 6, he called from the hardware store. I can walk over after closing, breath rough. Come by, I answered, unlocking the deadbolt. He arrived with tired eyes and empty hands. We're getting pressure from her board, he started. They want a tidy narrative before the renewal. I'm not the ribbon, I said, keeping it level. He nodded and rubbed the bridge of his nose. She's calmer since the meeting, he offered carefully. She keeps the phone in a drawer now. That drawer will open under stress, I warned. He looked at the floor and didn't argue. She asked me to invite you to dinner. Just us 3, no extras, 1 hour. Neutral spot or nothing, I answered immediately. He sighed but didn't push the location again. We picked the diner near the river bend. Booth, music low, waitstaff who don't fuss. I arrived first and chose a seat by the wall. She entered 10 minutes later with controlled steps. Thank you for making time, she began. Thank you for returning the M. One I countered. Her throat worked once and then settled. We all made mistakes, she tried, watching my face. We made different choices, I answered without heat. Let's stick to agreements going forward. She folded her hands and leaned in an inch. I want one more clause, she pressed. I set down my fork and waited. If we miscarry, we get privacy from you. No posts, no reactions, no mentions for a month. Her voice held, but her eyes did not. Yes, I said immediately, feeling the gravity. No conditions, no timers, I'll disappear a month. She blinked hard and took that in. Thank you, she whispered, and it landed heavy. The server refilled our glasses and drifted away. Her phone buzzed once and she ignored it. Progress, I thought, and didn't trust it yet. He released a breath he'd been hoarding. Another item, she said, bracing both palms. If the birth goes well, you meet the baby first week. Not online, not filmed, just the three of us. I studied her face and found no angles. I'll come with a small gift in quiet, I said. No photos of me holding them. She nodded and didn't barter the moment. Something delicate clicked into place. We walked out and paused at the curb. She extended a hand without forcing contact. I touched it once and let go. He watched like a man learning a new language. 3 days passed without a single violation. No tags, no invitations, no pop-up couriers. Then my feed threw another test at dawn. A teaser image cropped to my shoulders. I messaged her before I finished my coffee. Pull the teaser now, that is my jacket. On it, return within 30 seconds. The post vanished before my refresh completed. I sent a single checkmark in reply. She answered with 3 words I didn't expect. Good catch, thank you. I saved the screenshot anyway. At work, my manager handed me a letter. Pro bono counsel had accepted my intake. Expect a call this afternoon, she said, tapping the envelope. Congrats on boundaries with teeth. The attorney called at 2 on the dot. Cease and desist is ready when needed, she said. We prefer compliance through conversation first. Conversation is our current tool, I answered, pacing. We'll keep logs and timelines, she added. Send every screenshot and every deletion notice. Done, I said, and color-coded a folder. Evidence doesn't care about feelings. Evening, a group chat lit up with a surprise. A baby shower thrown by her board tonight. They wanted gifts and public speeches and photos. Her name topped the flyer like a headliner. I called him immediately and he picked up fast. You knew about this? I asked, pulse steady. I found out an hour ago, he replied tight. She told them no, the board ignored. Cancel your appearance, I said without a cushion. Or I post the pledge with signatures. Silence, then a long breath through his nose. We're not attending, he said, voice clear now. I checked my feed as the hour approached. Fans gathered in the comments like a parade. The venue posted an empty stage and hopeful captions. Then a last-minute notice appeared, event postponed. A direct message arrived from her moments later. I didn't want that party either, she wrote. Thank you for covering us with consequences. I stared at those words and felt gears shift. The next week rolled in with medical updates. Heartbeat strong, measurements within range. She sent only the essentials and then went quiet. He forwarded calendar reminders without commentary. One morning, a taxi horn jerked me awake. A text from him landed with 2 words. Hospital now, every muscle lit without warning. I grabbed the folder and left at once. In triage, he found me before I saw her. She asked for no relatives, he said, hands shaking. Except you if you want to wait nearby. I nodded once and took a chair outside. A nurse approached with forms and a smile. She gave permission to update you periodically, she explained. She said you're the boundary person, she added. Then you know the rules, I answered, almost smiling. Contractions intensified and voices moved quicker. I paced the corridor and counted to 20. My phone stayed dark on purpose. I didn't want alerts piercing this space. Hours stretched in tight loops. I drank water and checked my watch. Listened for footsteps that meant news. The door opened and a nurse waved me closer. Healthy baby, she said, cheeks flushed. Parents exhausted but steady. She handed me a visitor badge and paused. 5 minutes only if you choose. I entered the room and stopped at the threshold. No cameras, no audience, just 3 people breathing. She reached for the bassinet and then looked up. Would you like to meet them? Her voice soft. I stepped forward and kept my hands low. The baby yawned and clenched a tiny fist. Something in my chest loosened like a knot undone. I didn't cry, I just stood and absorbed. He watched me with eyes I recognized. No performance, no script, just raw gratitude. Welcome to the world, I murmured to the bundle. I'm here on my terms and yours. My 5 minutes ended and I backed away. She nodded as if passing a torch carefully. Thank you for standing firm when I couldn't, she said. I met her gaze and let that land. In the hallway, he caught my sleeve gently. Will you help us keep it small? He asked. No sponsors, no staged moments, just life. Yes, I said and meant every letter. I left the floor and called the counselor. Baby arrived, everyone stable, agreements intact. Document this as a successful boundary event, she replied. We both laughed once at the strange phrase. Outside, my phone lit with notifications exploding. Fans speculating, strangers demanding a first look. I posted 4 sentences and locked comments completely. Healthy child, family resting, privacy requested, respect it. Minutes later, a final test appeared in my inbox. Brand rep offering a charitable partnership with our story. Money for a cause, visibility for them, pressure for me. I forwarded it to the attorney with one line. Decline on our behalf, no negotiation. Her reply came back with a thumbs up icon. Then a formal rejection drafted in crisp language. I filed it and closed the folder on my lap. A week passed with quiet that didn't feel empty. I visited once, short and calm. Brought a book for when nights run long. Left it without a note or hashtag. On my 3rd visit, she handed me a small envelope. The one I had sealed months earlier at my desk. Save it for later, she said, smiling without angles. I will, I answered, careful with the moment. We stood there listening to the soft breaths. He adjusted a blanket and kept his voice low. We're learning to live at regular volume again. Keep it there, I said, and he nodded. Before I left, she offered something I never expected. You don't have to call me anything, she said. You can just be here when it matters. I felt my guard ease a fraction and hold. On the sidewalk, I paused and looked back once. No cameras pointed, no windows filled with watchers. Just a door closing on a quiet house. Tomorrow could tilt again, but I wasn't bracing alone.